Welcome back to Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, part of the Migration Media Network. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and today my guest is Yingying Li. I'll tell you more about her in just a second. I also have an update about a small change I'm making to the podcast that I think will better reflect what I want the show to be and will expand the scope in a way that it's kind of been trying to do naturally anyway. And this week's episode is really a perfect example of that. So as I said, our guest this week is Yingying Li. Yingying is an expert in cross-cultural leadership and the founder of Silicon Valley-based startup Yingfluence. Her credentials are very impressive. She has a decade of experience working in the US, China, Brazil, India, and Turkey. She's trilingual in Chinese, English, and Portuguese. Her clients as a cross-cultural management consultant include billionaires and executives from companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, Cisco, and Intel. Yingying also serves as a mentor at Founderspace, which is the top global accelerator for overseas startups, founded by Steve Hoffman, who, if you've been listening to the show a long time, remember was guest number 5 on this podcast. And if you're new to the show, you can check that one out. That was a really fun interview with Steve way back in the day. Yingying and I had a pretty epic talk, actually. We covered topics ranging from her childhood in Kaifeng, China, to her journey ever farther west, and we concluded with her thoughts on how to build all the needed bridges between China and the rest of the world to enable this best possible future for all of us. And honestly, this is one of my favorite episodes so far, and I really do hope you enjoy it. I think there's a lot of takeaways here, and I learned a lot from my time with Yingying, so please give it a good listen. So as far as the change coming to the show that I mentioned, it's basically this. The reality is that many, if not most, of the people who are going to be coming to China to do these ambitious or unusual things or make a difference in the future will either be ethnic Chinese who are coming here to discover their roots, or, as is in Yingying's case, native Chinese people who have lived and traveled and worked abroad and are now looking to spend at least part of their time back here in mainland China for business purposes. And there are a lot of great stories among all these people, and I'd like to get more of their voices on the show and into your ears. So moving forward, I'm going to slightly reframe the show's mission as being focused on people who are coming or returning to China to do things that are ambitious, unusual, and sometimes crazy. I hope you like the new focus. It's just a little tweak, but I want to get a more interesting diversity of people on the show, and I think this will be more inclusive with the overall idea I had in the first place, which is really how do we understand this and how do we make a difference moving forward. So to get us off on the right foot with that theme, now please enjoy my interview with Yingying Li. Well, I'm glad to be here with my new friend Yingying Li. How are you, Yingying?
Great, awesome to be here.
I'm glad to have you here, and we will get into the details of how we met and all that as we have the conversation, but I have a traditional first question, which is normally tell me who you are, where you're from, and why China, but in your case, of course, you're from China and you've gone elsewhere. So give us the short version of who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing now. Let's do it that way.
Well, someone want to build walls, but I want to build bridges that connect people and culture, creates empathy and opportunities. Obviously, my name is Yingying Li, so awesome to be here, and I am from a very old Asian city from China, with 2,700 years old. Can you guess where it is?
Well, I know the answer is Kaifeng, so...
Yeah, so very historical cultural places, but I had the fortune or the luck to travel outside of the country when I was just a little bit over 20. India, Turkey, and Brazil, and finally United States, Silicon Valley, and now I'm sitting here in Beijing with you. I would say this whole journey of cross-cultural path started with when I first entered the school in Hubei University. Mm-hmm. I had a major. Back then, it was the first of its kind. It's called International Cross-Cultural Communication.
And that's actually was a major back then. That's pretty great.
Yeah, that's basically where it all started.
Okay.
Yeah. And along with the time, I took the journey to travel and work in India, Turkey, and Brazil. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but essentially had my start in Silicon Valley, which is a management consulting platform that applies diversity thinking to train and transform founders, entrepreneurs to connect and lead their brands cross-culturally. We provide futuristic executive coaching, brand strategists, and those international partnerships. for helping brands go to each other's market. We focus on right now China, United States, and Latin America, more specifically Brazil. Hopefully, at this critical moment of globalization and digitalization, we could really leverage the power of media, technology, and those experts, cross-cultural experts, and this influencer networks we are building to help brands and executives, founders to be successful in the markets they want to enter.
So in terms of nuts and bolts of how we met, let's kind of talk about that right now, because this is an example in practice, in practical reality, of what you're doing with your company. From my point of view with the show, I saw you commenting on James Lalonde's profile on LinkedIn about something, and you had the name of your company, which is
Influence.
Right, and that caught my attention. I'm like, what's this about? And so I looked at your page and I read about you and I thought, wow, she's really impressive and is doing all these interesting things. And I saw that you work with Founderspace. I'm like, I know Steve Hoffman. He's been on the show. So this is an example of this very small world. And of course, you're connected, friend of a friend situation. But that's one example. That's like a real kind of, micro example. At the macro level, though, to change cultures and move economies, you have to do this at a bigger scale. So that seems like more of the space where you're looking to work and play, yes?
That's how what I see modern professionals embrace cross-cultural connections. And do not underestimate this. This is very powerful. In today's world, we are equipped with this philosophy, this methodology, and the platforms, and such a strong will to connect. And I think this is a great example to see how, if you are being yourself, you're presenting yourself in the best way with your cultural intelligence. When I say cultural intelligence, that would be the motivation, the strategy, and knowledge, and the plans. So you present the world with that, and they will find you. And I think everything will come along. This is a law of attraction as well.
Absolutely. And I will have provided links in the show notes as well, and I will have, done an introduction to brag about you a little bit, to put your credentials out there so that you don't have to, feel embarrassed and give your resume. But it's a pretty impressive resume, and you've lived and traveled and worked so many places. Let's go back. Let's start a little bit kind of early days, because this is really as much about who you are as about what you're doing. So you're from Kaifeng, and I know from talking to you off mic that you sort of showed this precocious streak, we might call it. Early on, you didn't seem to fit neatly into the expectations of the educational system, but that led you to be where you are. Can you kind of tell that story a little bit about you, about the young Yingying?
Absolutely. When I was young, I would say I grew up in a place that encouraged being more like silent, obedient than being rebellious. I was constantly in some way, quote unquote, criticized by my father of speaking, talk a lot at home. And I especially like talking to the elders and talking to the people who actually have a lot of experience. When I was young, I just couldn't help. I liked connecting people. But as I go with the education system, that I have a huge pressure in college entrance examination. So I literally turned that power of curiosity into the efforts of studying as much as possible.
Okay.
So for the college entrance examination, I basically almost killed myself in order to get to the best school I could.
Sure, for the Gaokao.
For the Gaokao, how stressful, because I come from Henan province. As you might know, that Henan has the most population in the whole China, more than 100 million people.
I've learned this. It's
with
unbelievable.
Most students population in the country. So we, for example, in my province, I have to get 50 more scores than the similar level of similar kind of exams in different province in order to get to the same level of school.
Right. For people who aren't familiar with this, the kind of short version is that essentially, depending on the educational systems are sort of ranked and they think, oh, well, maybe it's easier, so you have to score higher to be equivalent to somebody, say, from Beijing or Shanghai, for instance. So it's they've got this whole system where they sort of try to equalize it, but day to day to a person, it seems like, wow, this is crazy. I have to do so much higher.
Yeah, and I would say that the first time the college entrance exam I failed. And not miserably, just like not very satisfying to go to the best school I wanted. So I decided to review, which in Chinese called 复读, review for 1 more year. So what we done is my mom tried all her best to find her relationships network to put me in one of the best review class of review in the best school she could put me. And I was the last one. I was the 垫底, basically the last. My score was literally the lowest when I entered this.
You had the most room for improvement, basically.
At the same time, like that. So for the whole year, this is my life. Wow. I left the school at 10 o'clock, and I locked the door for the school. And no, for my class, and went back and studied for another 2-3 hours, and sleep at 1, and I wake up at 4 or 5 to go to the school with my bicycle, and try to be the first. A lot of times I open the door actually, and this is when we started the morning 自习 self-study session in the morning at 5. So, and the whole day we were in school doing all kinds of exams, all kinds of exercise. That's how we actually push ourselves. And finally, I was having the lucky draw, basically, among 92 students. I'm one of the 6 who made to the top school in China, the level 1 school. And a lot of people say, Yingying, you were just won lottery. But of course, I know that I tried as much as possible. So when you consider won a lottery means you are able to choose your major. You are also able to be selected by the school you choose. It was like such a bat.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah, this is something that the show is about 1/3 China, about 1/3 US, and about 1/3 the rest of the world. The typical listenership of an episode. But people who are listening to this, if they've been listening a while, they're fairly China savvy, or if they're not already from China or have lived here. But for people who don't know, the system, as you just described, it's really strange from a Western point of view, but yeah, you don't get to pick where you go to college. You don't get to pick your major unless you were in this absolute upper tier threshold. And then you have your choices are still kind of constrained, but you can't just go, I want to be an engineer, I'm going to go there to school. Well, okay, you have to test into it. They have to accept you, of course, is something that we all deal with. I couldn't get into Harvard, for instance. I applied when I wanted to go to college. But it's not even that simple. You can't even basically fill out the application unless you fit these other criteria.
Because so much competitive in that area,
right.
And I still consider myself super lucky in that time.
Well, and that's certainly your story and your experience from the point of view of somebody listening. I know my experience. I don't know what the people listening right now think, but from my point of view, you earned that lottery ticket. You worked your butt off.
The ticket to the boat first.
Exactly. So where did you end up going to school? You just said it, but
it was Hubei University in Wuhan. Mm-hmm. And the major, I was really, looking back, I'm very grateful for this major because this major was just established 1 year before I could choose, which is 2006. But I entered 2007, the second year of the school. There's no graduates. There's no real, how to say...
They haven't tested the curriculum, really. There's no track record yet.
It was like experimental. It was like a laboratory thing for... cultivating this group of students to see work or not for cultivating future, what I call international diplomatic, students.
And so were you interested, you chose that major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what made you think, I'm curious to go back even to before we get, because there's a lot to cover with you, but I'm fascinated by this because what planted that seed for you? Because this is it's pre-smartphone, so everybody, it's really smart. BlackBerries were out in the States and stuff, but what planted that cross-cultural interest for you? Or did you discover this course and go, wow, that program sounds amazing? Is that, how did it get into your imagination?
If you really know back then how high school students choose their major, again, I just mentioned about like lottery.
Yeah.
Most people couldn't really be able to successfully enter the major they choose.
Right.
It still considered has to be with the admission.
Right.
But there's a book, basically this thick, with all the majors listed, all the schools, and among all the schools, there are a lot of similar majors they offer. But this particular school, Hubei University, have 2 majors in this liberal art discipline.
Yeah.
2 majors, only 7 students, 4 in history major, 3 in international cross-cultural communication, to the whole province. They only select 3 students. And of course, that time, it was like this. After school, they ask you to predict your scores for your whole day. All the students gather together based on their memory, how well you did in this examination.
Okay.
And also, they give you standard answers. You predict how much scores you can win,
okay.
And based on that you choose the school's levels, then you can choose that. So it's such a difficult job.
Yeah,
it's basically like like data scientist, data analysis.
Yeah,
but
you need a degree in how to do like numerological prediction.
Yes,
just to get this far.
Exactly. And then at the time, this major caught my eye after I couldn't make my decision for the whole day. It's about 5 o'clock.
Okay.
My headmaster told me, Yingying, are you going to supplement this form or not? I said, wait, 5 more minutes. Then I open this. I find out Hubei University has these 2 major, and the one is 国际文化交流, cross-cultural communication. I say, this is it. I'm going to choose this one.
Awesome.
I got it. And it's not just
funny.
I choose, I got it. And my score happened to pass the
threshold that you had to have for that.
Exactly. So I was lucky enough, and also kind of fate.
And you were one of 3 people in that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly, that year. I would say the first big thing happened in my university that finally shaped my confidence was 2009, when I got a chance to be admitted as intern in ISEC to be sent to India. ISEC is largest student organization in the whole world, entered China in 2012, entered ISEC Host, which is a big, very, very well-known school in Wuhan, Huazhongkeji University, in 2006. So I got a chance to meet this group in 2009, basically.
Okay.
Interesting enough, after a few selections, I was finally admitted to this program, but I was sent to India. So okay, the first time abroad was India. Very interesting place. At the time, I only knew one particular movie about India.
Okay.
That was Slumdog Millionaire. Have you ever watched that before?
Sure.
That's the all impression I knew
That's
about.
your whole knowledge of India, basically.
Whole knowledge about India at the time. It's mysterious. It's kind of
it shares the border with China.
Yep.
And you'd seen one movie, and that's about the extent of it.
Anyway, I was very excited for this first time abroad and first time to an incredible and exotic country.
Right.
But it almost took me 2 months to get the visa. 2009, in the summer especially, the relationship between China and India was a little bit intense.
Okay.
And in Tibet, both sent troops.
It was one of those moments where things are tricky.
Exactly. But I didn't know, as a student involved in international internship program, you never know what you're gonna encounter. But
right.
I waited. I couldn't get it, and I have to take the decision to jump the train, 12 hours standing in the train from Wuhan to Beijing.
Wow.
Because time's near. the deadline's near. I need to go to India, but I don't have the visa. So I was determined to get the visa in Beijing without actually knowing anything how to do that. But when I got in Beijing, I went to the embassy for 3 times. Every single time they told you randomly, I'm sorry, it's not ready, just go back to wait. So imagine tomorrow, my flight is going to take off at 12. And today, at about 1, I still don't get the visa. How urgent it could be. So I gathered all my courage to go to the embassy again.
Yeah.
And it was really like a movie. And when I entered, they asked me to wait. And after a few minutes, they asked, oh, Yingying, go inside to meet the, the ambassador or those consular. I was very happy and cheerful. It was like
You're
a bird.
thinking, this is it.
This
We're
is
almost
it.
there.
I'm gonna get
Almost
it.
there. Right?
Exactly. When I got in, the official or the consular looked at me. No, it's not you. Wrong person. Get out. So they called the wrong name, I think, when I was waiting in a room. But I wouldn't like to leave. I brought all my materials, all my documents. I sent in front of his face. I say, see, this is my airplane ticket for tomorrow. This is my letter. This is what. So this guy has no excuse but look at me and say, okay, go back to the visa center this afternoon to get it. I say, no, I want now.
Yeah.
Because they tricked me last time.
Right.
So I got to see it. I want now. So this guy very upset, looked like the other stuff beside him, say, okay, make it right now for her. Okay, so I saw him by using this little machine. Zzz, they created a visa for me on site. This is the first time. And I got it. And then I'm super, super happy and finally, this is my trip. Right?
Awesome.
But this is just beginning of disaster. When I finally took a flight to India, New Delhi, the first time abroad, arriving midnight in the airport. Everybody's in the airport looking at me, taxi, hotel.
Right, they're trying to hustle you, basically.
Exactly,
right.
But I was completely lost.
You're like, where's my person I'm supposed to meet? And you're looking, and there's nobody with a sign that says, welcome to India.
No, nothing. No, I couldn't even find anyone who actually can direct me at all. At that time, I was a little bit, of course, panic.
Sure, understandable.
I just quickly look around. I found the girl I met
like
in the plane. And we were sitting together. She's Indian. She came back to visit her uncle, which is in New Delhi. So I asked her. I said, please, and I, basically asked her for help. She agreed. She took me to her uncle's place and house, and we actually stayed one night over there.
Very nice.
The first night in India was completely chaotic. And then after, a day or two, finally we get connected and they brought me to this organization. But it just, for some sort of reason, it's not organized at all, the whole thing. So I was constantly pushing from one place to another place. They couldn't really help you to settle. So think about this. I came there for internship.
Right.
But they keep sending you from one place to another place without actually letting you know what's going on. So, well, that's what I have to face. But finally, when the time's near, like over 10 days, few of us noticed something in our visa. Not every Chinese interns have this issue, but a few of us, like 4 or 5 of us, noticed there's one line in our visa called within 14 days, report to FRRO, Foreign Registration Office. And then we Google and we check what's going on. Literally, that means you need to register as a foreigner in a different country, and you need to go there and report. That's completely fine. But generally take 180 days for a Chinese to enter. But that year, because of this intense international relations, the embassy maybe they random put some of this restriction on some visa. They within 14 days, report FRO, check your background, whatever, right?
And maybe because maybe it had to do with the people who had never had no other stamps in their passport. This was your first international trip. It might have been something like that, or it might have been totally random. Who knows? It's bureaucracy in India. I have no idea.
Completely. Yeah, at that time, people from Pakistan have to report within 24 hours.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
So at the time, this is the first encounter of what international relations looks like could impact your personal
Sure.
choice at the time. But I didn't know, and we Googled, and so, okay, right now it's almost 12 days in India, so what gonna do? You only have less than 2 days to register. Okay, so we asked the organization to help us. Of
Sure.
course.
Naturally.
And this time, a bigger problem, just revealed, which is I wasn't really hired by the NGO from the invitation letter.
Okay. That you thought you were? You thought you were
That was a
hired?
mistake that I was having. I was sent to this letter by my organization in China, which is also a student organization who help you to prepare all of the materials.
Wow.
I was completely victim. I have no idea. And it turned out that that organization did not hire me as intern that year. So think about that. But the whole thing, I'm already India. I'm already India.
Yeah, the paperwork, the passport,
Yeah.
you've taken the trip, you've got, you're there.
I have just get this solved. So I asked the local India, ISAC New Delhi University. So help me. They say, I'm sorry, I can't because it's not our fault. So I asked the people from my local chapter in China, I'm Yingying, so sorry, it's too far away. We would like to help, but we couldn't. So at the time I figured out, wow, okay. So I have to all totally depend on myself at the time. I figured out, I look at the time, I have less than 48 hours. And also the only evidence I have is the invitation letter, which is, there's address, there's a name over there.
Right.
So I literally get a taxi, overcharged taxi, and I went to this place. I waited an hour for this president of this NGO show up. She finally came. She knew everything after I told her, and she said, well, 3 years ago I did hire a bright intern from the organization. His name's Liang or something, but I don't hire anymore. Basically, then feel, and why your student organization are doing this to you or thing like that. She was also kind of feel a little bit pity for me, but I'm going to use that opportunity to get help from her. So that's my plan at the time. So I tried to. That at that time, 20 years old, what should I say? I try to make everything make sense. Tried my best to communicate with her to get her help. Finally, she didn't say yes, she didn't say no, but she said she would consider about it. But I took that signal as a yes. So I very helpful, very happy coming back to my third place located in the International Youth Hostel. Then I think, oh, tomorrow my case would be
Problem solved.
Yes. But at 10 o'clock, she called me. At 10 o'clock in the evening.
That night.
She said, I'm sorry. I thought about this. I still do not want to bear the risk or take the trouble. So I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's not my business. So she changed her mind at that time. Or anyway, I understand. But at that time, I remember I was standing in the hotel in the balcony and looking at the stars and the sky in the midnight. I'm thinking about, God, who can help me at that time? I literally feel like I have nowhere to go. But I ask one more thing. I say, could you give me one suggestion what I should do? I understand you don't want to help, but could you just help, give me a little tips? And she said, maybe you could go to embassy, the Chinese embassy in New Delhi. Right? The consulate.
Yeah.
So I said, yes, I'm going there. So the whole night I didn't sleep. I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do the next morning. So in the morning I went to the embassy and using 1 hour to explain everything to the lady, what I call the Chinese consular.
Right.
One of the officers over there. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't help you because we never deal with this what would it call civil affairs or something.
Right.
Basically, that's out of their business. And at that time, think about that. I have like 6 hours left before the 5 o'clock, before this FRO close, and I wouldn't leave. I was just just standing there for another half an hour, figuring out what to do. And finally, this lady came out from the office again, brought a small piece of paper, and there's a name, Kuma or something, and a number. And she gave that small paper to me, say, go find Mr. Kuma. He's my friend, and mention my name. And then I say, wow. And then I should go. And before I go, she just basically just stopped me and say, okay, it's a 40 Celsius degree outside. Take this small water, like give me a small bottle of water. Just keep hydrated, basically. I was, my tears almost came down because at the time you feel that someone care about you in this emergency situation. So that I feel really, really, really emotional.
She extended some humanity here at a time when you really needed it.
Think about that, right?
Totally.
And then I just rushed to the FRO for the third time. And then I directly went to the second floor.
You had this address for the man.
I got this legal secret or legal like weapon. I go direct to find Mr. Kuma. And the Kuma, after he deal with all the cases, he finally heard what I explained and also took his phone call to call the
woman that gave the referral, right?
No, called the woman of the NGO.
Oh, right, from the night before.
Yeah, he called the president.
Say, we have a letter with your company on it.
He basically, I have no idea what he said, but they talked for 20 minutes. That was the most anxious 20 minutes that I had in India at that time. Wow. Because that was I know that was decisive. I don't know what they're really talking about in Hindi, but after that, this guy looked at me, Kuma, and say, "Follow me." So I followed him. We bypass all the crowds, go directly to the guy in front of those officers who can make stamps. Yeah. And this guy spent another 5 minutes to explain the whole thing,
telling him what he's got to do.
To the guy, and the guy looked at me, and I smiled, and I pressed a stamp, pass on that. So this case was solved.
That explosion was her doing the stamping in the passport for the microphone.
It was such a movie for me at the time. And I look at the time, it's by 5 o'clock. It's right.
That was your deadline.
Right before they close.
Wow.
It's 5. I remember that very clearly. It was like a magic thing happened in my life, but after I'm so relieved. I was like a hero. My friends around me in the FR waiting all days. They say, Yingying, how do you get this? How do you solve this? And then we study about this case. My name was mentioned by the whole ISAIC big conference nationwide. Yingying Li case.
Seriously?
Yeah, that was the thing.
And so what did you learn from that in a few sentences? What's your main takeaway from that experience? Like, how do you get things done?
There's one philosophy I would express in Chinese first. 尽人事不听天命. That's exactly, try your best, do not just leave it. Just solve the problem, focus on the solution.
Nice.
Not the problem.
Nice. And you had to find the right people who could actually help. And so there's a time to follow a process and follow the rules, and there's a time where you have to figure out, okay, how do decisions actually get made? What's the way? And it usually comes down to this theme that's throughout our conversation, which is communication and crossing, building bridges, which I know is a big theme for you.
Yes, and influence at that time. Use all your influence and strategy and empathy and understanding about the situation. Do not give up. And a lot of people right now ask me, Yingying, so I want to build that experience. I want to be courageous. How could I be? I would say that throw yourself out of a situation like that. You will immediately grow up. You will immediately become that capable. Trust yourself. So just get out of your comfort zone. You're not automatically going there, but you were given the opportunity to be out of your comfort zone. And I think that you, as a human being, if we want to build leadership, you need to constantly create that circumstance like that for yourself. Even that's risky, even that's adventurous, it's scary. But you need to, because that's the best lessons, the best experience you could have to build that leadership.
So along the way to getting you to San Francisco and then back here, you have a big stop. I was impressed, as were the people at the group that we were sitting in the other day. So we actually met online, as I mentioned, and then you spoke at an event just this past weekend. And after the event, there was a small group of us who were sitting there talking. And several of the guys spoke Portuguese, and you are apparently quite conversational yourself. How did you come to speak Portuguese, and what's the story with that? Because I know this leads you farther west.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because in the fourth year of my school, I choose to go to Turkey basically there's another trip to have summer internship. I had that after the Turkey trip, which actually another chapter of story, but I had a wonderful time with Muslim culture, the interaction. After that, I was recommended to be a master student. The master is teaching Chinese to speakers of other languages. And I was selected by Hanban, which is Confucius Institute, headquartered in Beijing,
right,
to send to Brazil for being a Chinese teacher in São Paulo State University. That's how everything started. And because it's Brazil, I have to learn Portuguese. But because this is such a short period of time for preparations, there's no way for me to speak Portuguese. When I entered Brazil, of course, I tried to use my English to teach, but I'm sorry, Brazil has less than 2% of population speak English. All my class, all adults actually, professionals, there's only one student among all the students speak a little bit English. So can you guess the pressure that I'm facing? Once I try to use English to describe what I want to say when I just arrived there, but I was kind of quote-unquote criticized by the students. Say, professor or professora, you cannot speak English because all of us do not understand.
Right.
You got to speak Portuguese. So think about that in the first 1 to 3 months that I have no choice but learning and bring the dictionary and the notebook every time, everywhere I go. And also when I'm at my dormitory, I'm opening the radio, the television,
trying to get as much of it in your head as possible.
Doing the laundry and doing the cleaning and the cooking. Immersive.
Right.
I got to learn as much as possible. So after 3 months, I could basically have some conversational Portuguese going on and then learn that.
That's so funny. Imagining that you're trying to teach Chinese where your second language is English, and you're trying to teach it where the only common local language is Portuguese. That's kind of amazing. And how long were you there? You were there for a while, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And so what were some of the main lessons that you took away from that, personal things that led you to kind of where and I didn't mean to skip over Turkey. If you want to backtrack and talk about that's certainly fascinating as well. What were you doing in Turkey, actually? Let's touch on that, and then we'll wrap all this into the present.
Well, absolutely. When I'm in Turkey, it's through the same organization.
Through Confucius Institute.
ISIC.
ISIC.
People say, don't you hate this organization who provides such a disastrous experience for you? No, I don't. I literally appreciate that. So after 2 years of having this tremendous life experience, I choose to follow and to trust them again to go enter this program again to go Turkey.
Well, you probably 2 years of it with India, then you knew how to deal with it.
Yeah,
so,
much better, much more relaxed.
Right. So
in Turkey, I was also doing this cross-cultural presentation and educational work. We were helping the orphans, and also we were helping the high school students to build more cultural awareness and learn English in high school, along with more than 100 other interns coming from more than 30 countries. We were building leadership workshops.
Wow.
We were doing country presentations. We were doing this conference in Istanbul. It was an amazing experience. But I think the most amazing experience was living in a homestay family with Muslim family. 5 sisters, only the youngest sister, 17 years old, speak a little English. So the rest of people all Turkish. Think about that. So they pray every single day, and they treat me like really like angel. But the most tremendous unforgettable thing is I stuck my hand in an elevator. It's in an apartment.
To try to hold the door.
It's about I had an accident in the family, but basically, It was like old elevator
Oh,
everywhere.
okay. You're trying to. It was closing on somebody, and you're trying to help them out.
And we were joking around entering, going down, but I would touch the wall because the wall, you can see the wall every floor when you enter.
Sure, it's like a grade of some kind.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
So somehow I touched the wall. I was basically my hand was like. As you can still see, there's two small.
Oh yeah,
it's
you
not
have
very
two.
obvious.
Oh, that would have been painful.
Yeah, but
That
I
must
was
have been
sent to the
bloody
emergency
and painful.
room.
She's got two big scars on her fingers.
But it's
on her palm.
okay right now.
It's healed now, but
But I would
wow.
say that at the time I was scared to death. I was sent to emergency.
Oh sure,
Emergency
it was probably
room
bleeding
immediately.
really a lot, and it hurts.
Yeah, it
It's
hurts.
not good. Doesn't
and
look good.
For the whole month, I need to go to the hospital for 20 times to change.
The dressings
It's all wrapped
and
up.
everything, yeah.
But it's not a painful experience for me.
Okay.
It's I would consider a blessing. Why did you say so? And the Turkish doctor see a scared Chinese girl. He looked at me. He said, "Would you like to have a piece of chocolate,
Oh,
ice cream chocolate cake made by my wife just now?" He every single time he interact with me like taking care of the baby. He
Wow.
know he's not going to try to, okay, just doing this,
Yeah.
do his job, but he really take care of me and making jokes, making conversations, asking about cultures. So we had every single time we were like having a great cultural interaction when I changed my
you had the
medicine.
band. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and the
Wow.
family took care of me, brushed my ears, teared the breath for me, and took me everywhere and asked me to drink holy water where they brought from Jerusalem, pray for me. So sincere, religious, but I feel the whole warm love of this culture and country. I feel I belong there actually. I literally left my heart in Turkey when I left. I cried like a baby.
Oh, wow.
So the whole thing, I don't even remember about my accident,
Yeah.
but I remember so much about how well I was treated by them and how much rich culture they have.
Was the program like 2 years specifically, or was it just this time to go? Did you have another opportunity, or was it just kind of time to go?
At that time, think about this Confucius Institute. Of course, it's by contract. Every year you could say you could leave, but they encourage you to stay because that's your Portuguese getting better
Sure,
and your
sure.
teaching experience getting better.
Yeah.
A lot of my colleagues choose to stay over 3 years or even married and live there forever.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Brazil is kind of a relaxing country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends. I've never been there, but I've had a lot of students and friends from there over the years. And
Yes. After teaching for 2 years, and it's a critical moment for me to think about. I think it's something inside of me is like a little knocking thing, asking me where I want to go next.
Right.
And of course, everybody faces this in their life. And I thought about, well, Brazil is such a relaxing place. When I was teaching over there, I have enough time to travel to like north and south and to experience the culture and the nature. So I remember one particular day I was traveling from Iguazu, which is the waterfall from Argentina area. This area. So and then I was on the bus. I look outside. Oh, so beautiful scenery outside. It's green. It's so natural, so pure. And I have a voice asking my heart.
Yeah.
So what? So what? So it is beautiful. I'm sure people think traveling it's beautiful, it's enjoyable, but
Right.
is that what you want? Live your life just totally relaxing and enjoying the nature and scenery?
And some people do, and
Yeah, of
more
course.
power to them. But
Yes.
yeah, we know how your story ends. So that
But
was
I-
obviously not your response.
But I think my natural response would be I love people.
Yeah.
I love engaging with people. Along with that is nature and cultural thing. So I asked myself what I would do, and I think I find this driven spirit coming out of my heart that I need to leave, and probably I want to go to the United States for further study. I love English. I want to be able to go there to travel and to actually work and study. So essentially I make a decision to come to the United States for having my second master degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you come back to China for a while in
Yes.
between to kind of regroup
Yep.
and do your applications?
Finish my first master degree, and also preparing at the same time preparing for going to the United States, passing the TOEFL and GRE.
Oh, so how long were you back in China?
Only a couple months.
Oh, so
Yeah.
so what is your first master's in, and then?
And my first master student school, actually, I was recommended to be. I didn't really even take
For
the
the
exam.
education?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you were naturally recommended to be the master through this program.
Okay.
And they select you because based on your performance and
Got it.
scores and your things. And it was teaching Chinese to speakers of other languages.
Excellent. So you had to do a little coursework when you got back, but
Yeah.
your experience was the majority of the program.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
fantastic. I wonder if I could get a master's for just being a
I can recommend.
questionable ally. No, there's nothing that I automatically get a master's for. Maybe film at this point, but so you're back here, and where did you go to the States? What was your first stop?
First stop is Utah. I still remember that.
right, you
I'll
mentioned-
never
yeah, we-
forget that.
Beautiful place,
Yep.
spectacular place. Anyone who has not been to Utah is missing out in terms of the scenery, but culturally, it's kind of another world,
It's a very unique
especially
place.
for heathens like me who are from like the dirty South and then Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
and
It's
I-
very different in Utah.
It is really, I would say, I appreciate a lot of the learning and working and engaging experience over there. But I have to say that it is Utah that make me make me think where I'm going to be.
Okay.
So when I was in Utah, I was doing my master degree, mass communication,
All right.
with a focus on social media study and international public relations.
Wow. And was that Salt Lake? Was that
It
University
was
of? Or-
Brigham Young University in Provo.
Oh, Brigham Young. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
that's it's LDS
Yes.
school.
Church of Latter-day Saints. It's a
Yes.
Mormon. I think it's their flagship university, if I'm not mistaken. I have
It's,
some friends who are
yeah,
Mormons.
it's a pretty big university.
Right.
It's one of the largest private university in the United States.
Right. It has a
Yeah.
great reputation academically. It is also, again, it has a very LDS focus because that's the foundations of it, and that's the
Absolutely,
majority of the
absolutely.
student body.
Absolutely. This school has a lot of uniqueness, actually. I'm sure a lot of interesting aspects about it. But I learned a lot from this university, from this community, because it's mainly religious community. They are very, very religious. And to be honest, I didn't even realize that after living in India, Turkey, and Brazil.
Right.
I still, when I just entered this university, when I was just living there, I feel having some culture shock.
Yeah, sure.
Then I ask myself that, oh wow, really, Yingying, you're doing cross-cultural work for so long time, and you're still having culture shock? I keep
Yeah.
asking myself why, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think Utah is this unique place with a
It
lot
is.
of mountains
It is.
and religious activities. And it was kind of like that time I asked myself, okay, Yingying, what do you truly want to be? Mm-hmm. Since if you're not Mormon, what do you want to be?
Right.
And then the time that I used all my vacation time in school, the first year, to travel to more than 20 states in the United States.
What?
The East and the West
Really?
and the South, all big metropolitan cities.
Did you fly around or did you do a driving trip?
I mostly fly. And
Okay.
also I learned driving in Utah. I got a car and
You have the room to do it there. You have
Yeah,
some big wide
it's-
open spaces.
it's wide
That's a good
open.
place to learn to drive.
Absolutely, I appreciate that
Yeah.
as well. And I think when I went to San Francisco, because I traveled to all the big cities, Seattle and New York and Boston and Houston, I feel like never feel so much connected when I went to San Francisco. And later I just have to think about why. I think that besides the nature and of course San Francisco has water and
Sure.
has bridge, especially the bridge. I remembered when I was young and the symbol of the United States was Golden State, not the Liberty statue.
Okay. That's what stuck with you was like
Probably
seeing like the Golden Gate Bridge and
Yes.
California sites.
And that's why I think in my life, so far I've done a lot of things, a lot of work related, like bridging the gaps, bridging people and culture, and they resonate with me. A symbol or bridge means so much to me. It's not just a bridge, not just symbol, but I kind of looking for that in my life all the time. When I see that, I feel this is the right place to be because I want to be the bridge too. So I think in some way, and also of course, the most attractive part about the valley is the diversity. The diversity and the talents coming all over the world who actually are not conventional. In some way, they're rebellious. They want to change the world. They're truly with this unconventional mind.
So San Francisco, of course, is a very diverse place, and it's known for its mix of people and cultures, but it's most well known for the tech industry and communications and startup mode, entrepreneurial spirit. What has been your focus since moving to San Francisco and building yourself, building your brand, changing your life? What has San Francisco enabled you to launch for yourself? What have you been up to there?
Wow, that's a big question, but in a
Take your
nutshell,
time. Take your time.
one sentence I would say, empower cross-cultural leadership would be one of my fundamental pursuit and mission. But everything starts from what I have done last 10 years probably, building cross-cultural bridges. And I've seen so many quote-unquote walls in this whole world, but there can never be enough bridges. As you probably know that bridges between cultures that create peace, and bridges between companies, startups, creates prosperity and win-win. And bridges between you and me and people foster empathy and trust and opportunities. Along with the years, I have dealt with many people from many different backgrounds, not just culturally different, but also status different.
Sure.
And I saw so many inequality and failure and mistakes and disasters when created because of this lack of understanding, lack of empathy. So essentially, I feel like interestingly, why people don't have that much empathy is because people really, it's hard for them to understand people from another culture. But like I mentioned, stories in India, Turkey, a lot of stereotypes for this area, for those kind of cultures. I just see Turkey is dangerous, why go there? Brazil was violent, why go there? Things like that. But it's not about that. I would say that I want to use my gift that what I call Ever's special power give me, which would be one word, communication, to help people understand that and to really build empathy, understand each other. In business world, a lot of things failed because, again, lack of empathy to understand and learn from each other. Things literally go back to where I have done in Brazil. Imagine a beautiful Sunday in São Paulo and a big house made of tall walls. A group of shirtless Chinese businessmen are playing mahjong all day long, while complaining about their Brazilian colleagues. Those Brazilians just couldn't get things done. All they think about is going to the beach, drinking beers, and dance samba. Lazy, whatever. They don't know. A couple blocks away, in another apartment, their Brazilian colleagues are complaining about them. Well, what the heck Chinese thinking about? In our meeting, there's no way to figure out it's a yes or no from their face. What do they expect us to do? So I saw so much conflicts in this because I talked to both at that time. I know, but I cannot communicate directly for each other about what they actually think about each other. That creates more problems.
Exactly.
Instead of, solutions.
You create conflicts.
So at that time, I really have to use strategy and all my mind focus on how I'm going to build more understanding, more empathy instead of more conflicts. So I literally jumped in, built workshops for each other to understand each other's culture. Cross-cultural leadership programs. And also I took them to have the trip together, sing karaoke, play basketball, and have a soccer game, and have barbecue and dance. And I use everything I could to help each other get interested in learning each other's culture and language.
So that's the Chinese team building skills that they're so fond of these days, and you applied that in Brazil between your local folks and the Chinese folks.
Yeah, gradually they make friends.
Sure,
and they of course like each other more and more. So see, this is a human touch. So nothing can replace this human touch and human interaction. The trust has to start from here.
Absolutely.
Yourself.
Absolutely.
Really. So that gradually lead me to what I'm doing right now, essentially. Right. And in San Francisco, things can repeat. A lot of companies from different culture, different countries. And also for Chinese, I came from this particular culture. I know how hard for Chinese to express themselves because we are Confucianism, and we were taught in our nature, in our culture, that the nail stick out will get beaten. The duck makes most noise, we get shot. That's our thousand years of societal teaching. But that doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us the place we need to be in order really to show this is what we have done.
That doesn't work outside the borders of China very well.
Typical Asian culture, but Chinese, I really think it's time for a lot of things happen because Chinese culture's influence is so strong, and in this globalized world, we're not really ready yet to show who we are, what we do. But think about the Chinese influence outside of China. They're so strong. They're everywhere, building bridges, building companies, and building all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Interacting, buying, touring, traveling. So many cases of interaction. But are we ready to show what China is about? We're not ready. I think this is one side, I think, from building bridge perspective that I need to work on helping in the cross-cultural communication side.
And that's what you've been doing professionally. I know that among other things is that you've worked as a mentor with Founder Space, and that's part of our connection we mentioned at the top of the show. So you've been doing that and helping with bridging those gaps of understanding with Chinese. I'm like working in the Valley, that sort of thing, as well as I assume with people in the Valley trying to understand how to deal with China, because China is a player and an investor, and as well as a client. And so how does that extend into what you're doing? What led you to form your own brand, Influence? And what's that about?
Great question. First of all, I would like to say I was working as a part-time coach for On the Room, which is leadership development group from East Coast. It's an American company, but global company. They found me. I was finally hired as one of the youngest coach for them. And there's a lot of story for that, but basically I think I was chosen by them because we are synergy, and I see my activeness, this part. And while doing this as a communication coach, and also at the time I was a part-time journalist for Kaifeng Media Group, the global news network, and helping them to do interesting interviews with the people from diverse background. So these things, and also the previous experience that I had accumulated, all brought to one thought: how can I do more? Am I really satisfied with all the status, the roles I've been playing? I always want to be an entrepreneur. And I came back to look at why I came to the United States. Why San Francisco? So somehow this whole idea came to make sense to me. Why coming to Silicon Valley? I didn't really eager looking for a job like most other graduates. All my mind is about creating these things. So until 2014, the beginning of 2014, I locked myself in my place. From time to time, I draw a lot of lines to summarize my experience before. I force myself to come up with values, what I stand for. I forced myself to really to say where I'm going to be. I need to be clear with my identities, what I stand for. So I draw a lot of things. I wrote a lot of things I could. And I still keep that drawing actually. And I come up with some words that in my shocking, I had a feeling that it's time to do your own, to really do whatever in the last 10 years you want to advocate for. So this word influence came out at that time after I was thinking. It was like it was like having a child at that time.
To give birth to this idea.
Give birth to this idea. Literally 2 or 3 months. I literally had this kind of mood. I was only.
So it's a faster gestation than a human baby, but there are animals in the animal kingdom that 2 or 3 months is about the right time.
I still consider it's my baby.
Nice, all right.
And an influence, because the whole thing, when people ask what influence is, so I would ask what is the English word come to your mind at the first place?
Well, it's obviously influence with your name. So,
yes. So
your specific type of influence.
Yeah, exactly. So in your personal or professional life, when and where and how you're gonna use this influence basically means in which scenarios you could actually literally for relationship building, that's more like personal, for negotiation, branding, sales, marketing, the whole thing, it's about influence. It comes to you that it's very important personally and professionally, especially in today's globalized and digitalized world. And then I'll literally bring this nature. My logo, as you can see, my logo has this color blend together that shows diversity and inclusion, and is also like a person open this arm means empathy and also openness, and also the loop. The loop is a symbol for an infinite loop. Actually.
Right.
That means infinity. Infinite opportunities if you really want to open your arms to embrace that. And I think I want to bring this spirit back to life. The whole thing it's a human touch thing, especially in the tech world in San Francisco. Think about this: if everything's about technology, we're actually right now in the edge on the edge of facing artificial intelligence, and can cause tremendous impact for human being. So everybody talk about AI everywhere I go.
Right.
When I was in San Francisco in the Bay Area, but I keep thinking about how about human intelligence, HI.
Pretty important.
Artificial intelligence, HI. I know maybe one day AI will surpass a line that maybe human will become irrelevant. Well, because it's self-learning so fast, right? But before it passes this line, let's say that before, what human being can do in order to help each other to move humanity a step forward instead of just waiting for being surpassed or cannot do anything, because we already know that automation already replaced so many jobs. Right?
And that will continue. That's going to
yeah.
continue, right?
So the general education is not really that helpful like before. So it's more like a mission come to me. Why I need to focus on that? Because I want to see humanity and human being be able to evolve to the next stage. It's not like what we have to wait whatever and it's gonna be doing the technology or the evolution come to us. Right. I really care about that. I keep thinking about how could we, our cognitively, psychologically, and physically, in some way evolve to the next stage, if not too high, but could be at least to face more higher challenges than before. How could we do that? So in that way, you definitely need to have a higher mission. So the company has a higher mission. This is really, really in the first place we want to do. Of course, the second part of the mission would be, I'm a Chinese. I do want to show the beauty of China to the whole world. And I came from a very traditional cultural place. I understand my people. It's not about I understand my people. I know China is last 100 years has suffered a lot, and China is the last 40 years has focused so much on economic development.
Exactly.
And a lot of problem comes out of that, but a lot of achievements come out of that.
Sure.
Our lives tremendously different than 40 years ago before opening up.
Absolutely.
But that's a critical moment. China, instead of because we have to focus on the economic development, to getting people out of poverty, to have a better life, materialistic speaking, but we didn't put enough efforts in thinking about cultural aspects. For example, spreading the culture like what Hollywood does in the United States, the movies, everything.
Sure.
And also communication.
Well, and this is a conversation that I won't derail us by getting into the details, but because a few sentences will make the point. Within the China Hollywood circles that I live in, of course, this is a big debate, and it's written about in the press. But I mean, internally, and like those of us who kind of work at this intersection of entertainment and culture and media stuff specifically, that's the big issue, because you can't mandate that people love you.
Yeah, no way.
Soft power cannot be dictated or mandated or administrated. It has to be an organic thing. I mean, you make it available and you can market it, you can present things the right way, but you cannot force someone to love you or love your movies or your film or your TV show or your books or your music. It must be appealing for other reasons, and so this is the issue that China's having. Hard power versus soft power is very different. You need different skill sets to administrate or manage those processes, and that's what I think that's part of why you're sitting here, because you clearly have an understanding to bridge those two things as well. There's the hard, there's the technical, and then there's the soft, which is the human and the iterative and the interaction between people culturally and empathetically.
Exactly. And that's why I say that the efforts China has to spend more efforts in actually working on that. We always say that I got trained in the West. I studied about the mass communication, persuasion, and the public relations. I studied about media. I also got trained by this training company. So it's about communication.
Right.
So I thought about how well planned or how well executed in the West, how much focus they put in cultivating the people in terms of communication. But I think it's important. This is about the basics of communication. In order to really to share a story or share something for people to accept, you need to really use the approach and the way that the audience familiar with or understand or accept to tell your stories. So basically that's a very essential philosophy that I'm working on. You got to know each other and know yourself. You can't just know yourself. Hey, we are the best. We're telling you this is the cool stuff.
Well, a friend of mine had this great way of putting it. We're all starring in our own movie.
That's what empathy.
Right.
It's in highest importance. Empathy means really before I even want to tell you how good, how interesting I am or my part. I already understand you. I'm already thinking from your point of view, your feet. Who are you? Before even prepared to tell my story, tell who I am. And that's so hard. But once you cultivate that skills, think about how powerful it could be. As a nation to nation, if equipped with empathy, it could be more powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And company, same thing. If the strategy involved with more empathy and cultural intelligence, understanding the other way first, instead of totally think about me, and pushing to others, and the people, the same thing. How could we not be able to be happy or successful?
And this is what's funny when you mentioned, you asked me what does the influence mean, and of course, I mean it's your name plus influence, and everything you elaborated on that very passionately and eloquently, and for me, it comes back to that way that I understood it initially, just from the name and seeing, oh, your name is Yingying, influence is your company. Okay, I get it. I instantly get it. Even, you elaborate on it and talk about the high mission and the practical aspects. How can one person make a difference in moving the conversation forward and achieving these objectives and doing how can one person most affect change?
Great question. I thought about this before. It's not about me, myself, to get transformed and transcendent. And after 10 or more than 10 years of cross-cultural experience, I want to be going forward with more people, with more leaders, so we can essentially move, if not just for China, for the whole cross-cultural places, cross-cultural regions, for people to build more bridges. Let's tear down the walls. But how could we do that? We have 5 steps.
Okay.
So the first step is called awareness. Awareness, yeah, just by talking about this right now through this podcast, I'm sharing this. So essentially, this message, this voice need to be heard, and people need to understand, oh, we can do that. We can even do that. There's a mantra, as you probably know, that is called, we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
So we do not want to know, and we will never know.
Well, I want to know. I'm with you through half of that.
Think about Trump. Yeah, that's you.
I want to know.
But most people is you don't know what you don't know, so you do not want to know, and why bother to know, right? And you will never know. So this is our life. Most people face. But how to break this mantra? That's what influence really want to strive for, which is you don't know what you don't know, but you want to know, and you will know. It's a different cycle.
So you have to plant. There has to be a way to plant a seed of curiosity about the value. What's the value of learning more?
Yes.
And that's, I think, what has to happen for a lot of people.
That's why educational efforts cannot be replaced, no matter what. But educational efforts has to be equipped with the strategies, with what the time grants for you. For example, technology. Maybe we can in the future use technology of AI and blockchain to really make this strategy more proliferating for more people to accept, and then we can actually connect with more strategic people to work on a different group of people work together form some interesting programs for helping foster that awareness. That calls for mission. That calls for mission-driven talent.
Okay, so that's awareness.
Yes.
Okay.
The second part would be intelligence. This specifically means cultural intelligence. What is cultural intelligence? Essentially, it's in Chinese we call 在不同文化圈中实现理想的游刃有余的能力. So it's a capability to, first of all, connect, engage, and influence successfully and effectively. For you, not just for you, for your organization, and for who you stand for. So that's a cultural intelligence. Think about it for a moment. It is something we need to put more effort. It's more researched in the West. Dave Livermore, who is a well-known author and also researcher that I pretty much respect a lot, and I read about his books and publications. He mentioned about the 4 pillars that I just mentioned: cultural, CQ, motivation. It's why I'm interested in cultural difference. Why should I, right? If you have an assignment to go to China or go to Brazil, that's your motivation, because you need to finish your entire. You need to overcome difficulty to take your job over there. So second pillar is cultural knowledge, CQ knowledge.
Okay.
You have to understand, right now we talk about the trade war between China and US, but how many people can just immediately say and speak out what are differences from the mindset differences between US and China, right? We're very different. Like one simple example is individualism and also collectivism.
Right, exactly.
That actually tells a whole story,
sure,
basically. But a third thing would be the strategy. After you have motivation and the knowledge, you should really form a strategy for yourself to be successful, and do not be lazy about that. Right. So at Influence, what strategy we do, we take us as example or laboratory, like the mouse. We try to form strategies. We want to form our cross-cultural talent network, or what we call global cultural broker system. Why we do so? Because I want to move forward with a lot of people like me, or more me than me. Basically, they are bilingual or trilingual or multilingual, and also experienced and connected in multiple cultural communities and the nation and markets, have the real insights or real resources and a real influence in those markets. But most importantly, they have to have a real compassion for cross-cultural leadership or leading people in building more bridges, because it's cannot be, oh, I'm very good at what I'm doing, I'm very talented, multicultural, multilingual, but I don't care about other people.
Yeah, that's
you're
not
not in my group.
That's not gonna work.
So I think you have to have the essential compassion for human being, for other people. So I think that's what we are looking for. And if you right now, the audience who actually listening this, are consider yourself one of the influencers like this, please contact us. This is really, I believe that this is what the whole community really means, and we can do great things together.
Awesome.
And the last is CQ action. You get to put into plan. You have to work hard like entrepreneur. Like right now, when I'm doing all this, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm nonstop.
I know you've been. I know how busy you've been, and the details. Me going through your schedule would bore anybody. It'd make you tired to hear it again. But the bottom line is that you're very tightly scheduled. This is maybe your most relaxed day, I think, from us talking earlier, which is good.
Yeah.
So because we talked, really wanted to get into this because again
let me finish. I'm almost finished.
Oh, please. Sorry.
The second step of influence.
Yeah.
The third step, which is techniques. So from broader to like more narrow down, and I think for the technique part, think about this. You want to be successful in China, or you want to be successful in Brazil or in India, any country. The fundamental skill you should have or technique is communication. Mm-hmm. You definitely can never emphasize enough this communication, cross-cultural communication, and how to build that. First, language skills. Secondly, cultural awareness and learn as much as possible, and also training programs. There are a lot of great coaching program, training program help you to build your own plans. And also personal branding, thought leadership building, negotiation, and plans with business or helping you to adapt to the local cultures, business-wise or personal-wise. There are a lot of skills you need to be equipped with in order to be successful. And the fourth thing would be engagement. Engagement means, okay, right now there's more than 100 million Chinese people traveling abroad every year since 2016, spending tons, like $26 billion US. Just by outbound tourism. Can you think about how powerful it could be?
My people can't see me, but I have the dumbfounded look on my face.
That's why a lot of stores in different countries like Chinese customers because we buy.
Right.
But take a second, think about besides the buy, what else you can do as a Chinese overseas enabler, engagement leader. So a lot of times you should allow yourself, okay, besides traveling, sightseeing, buying luxury goods, and besides enjoying my life, I know I finally come out of the country, relax a little bit. What else you can do to be better connected with local culture, to make your life, make your precious international engagement more meaningful? That would be the question I ask for all the outbound travelers. Please, if you could, make as much cross-cultural impact as possible. Try to be a little bit more spontaneous.
Kind of being a good little ambassador.
Yeah.
And sharing.
Yes, and share your culture, share who you are, and make connections, make friends, friendship. That's so important. Just be more outspoken, more engaging. The more engaged, the one who benefits yourself, essentially. I guarantee that.
Absolutely.
And finally, leadership or leading is L. Then you become a cross-cultural leader, and the cycle will goes back to helping more people to build more awareness and more intelligence and techniques and engagement. And then cycle goes on and on. It's called AITEL model, AITEL. So this is what we call the cycle for helping you to become a cross-cultural leader. So we have programs to helping you to do that. We also collaborate with all kinds of stakeholders, the real influential stakeholder who can help you to build that. But truly think about this is your cross-cultural plan, this is your strategy, and you need to do is really to build action on it.
So your primary focus, I mean, you're involved in deals and making things happen, and on your personal professional level. But as far as influence as as a company, would you say that your focus with that is on training people, providing services, and helping to share this approach and this intelligence?
No, actually, we have content, community, and we have the third part will be like a broker system. By content, I mean we really focus on creating this IP, intellectual property, that we want to essentially be able to, when people think of or hear influence, we want the relate influence to be cross-cultural leadership. The relate influence to be thought of positive hope that they're looking forward to, really to build more international skills and also be more internationally engaged. And so that, with that being said, we keep developing a streamline of content, case studies, and examples, and great insights for helping people to realize, oh, that's knowledge. It's more like a CQ knowledge part. We keep developing these plans in terms of workshops, seminars, and lectures, and we also collaborate with other influencers to do so. So the second part is community. We already mentioned we have influencers as a cross-cultural talent network. We are continuing building that and continue attracting and hoping to get more people like you, for example, involved. I'm sure you have a lot of cross-cultural stories.
Sure.
I'm sure you deal with a lot of Chinese directors.
That's what I do in my world. Yeah.
And I think how powerful it could be if you could have a platform and a community and really a regular base of like the sharing your insight. And in the future, people might pay for it, because in the future we might introduce the blockchain technology, the tokenizing, the possibility that this whole community would be a great ecosystem for people to foster this understanding that we call sphere of influence. So it's aligned with what influencer can do.
Well, it takes like my humble consulting business and plugs it into a broader network, which is really that's fantastic.
And technology allows us to do so. And finally, the broker thing would be what right now I'm doing a lot of broker things.
Where you're engaged in working on these deals and making introductions.
Starting many years ago, right, when I'm different country and people realize that, oh, well, Yingying is a hub. Yingying is also a bridge, bilingual or trilingual. And I think essentially we need a more Yingying everywhere, like influencers everywhere. So think about how powerful it could be. They understand the local cultures. They're passionate about doing this. And that will really reduce a lot of social issues. That's essentially what we want to do.
So a thing about the show is that, and I know you've heard some episodes and you're familiar with some of the guests who've been on before from looking through it and us talking about that. Many of the guests, I would say most of the guests actually, of course, and many of the listeners, they themselves are already working, they're doing their version of this in their way. They are already by definition probably bilingual or partially trilingual like myself. I speak a little Spanish and a little Chinese. And the fact is that many of the people, if they're here, they're already doing this. They're already either foreigners who are engaged with Chinese culture, or they're Chinese people who are engaging with what are those foreigners up to, right? So that's those people. And then the people, everyone else listening is curious about this. So you're talking to your core demographic right now, I think. So from your point of view, what are some of the biggest challenges that you seek to overcome? What are some of the biggest opportunities? How can you help? How can you suggest people help? Answer that. That's big, but answer that however it moves you to answer. But I'm curious, basically, your thoughts on China as of July 24th, 2018, and how to move forward from here. Like, what do people need to know, and what are the opportunities? What do Chinese people need to know looking out?
I'll first start with this line. One of my favorite quotes: communication is about leadership, and leadership is all about courage. Think about these three key words here. First, communication. Second, leadership. Third, courage. So I'll explain. So first, communication. As you just asked, many people are doing similar thing. They have great cross-cultural experiences. I'm sure they love, or sometimes they love what they do. A lot of people told me that, oh, I'm very engaging. I resonate with what you say. And also other people say, well, I face these challenges when I'm dealing with people from this cultural background. I'm sure, but ask yourself, have you really work very hard in focus on communication, doing the great work in communicating to no matter to find opportunity, getting connection, or solving problems. So never underestimate the power, the science and art of communication. I'm a big advocate for that. I believe effective communication with real passion and real thoughts, real heart on it, it will bring the best authenticity of you. And once you bring the best of your authenticity, that's a fearless of you. That's a very powerful side of you. Everything will come along. Don't worry about opportunities. Don't worry about you're like lose your face and get depressed and by whatever happening in society. Just let's go to my third word, and the second word is leadership, because once you do very well, you voice yourself. Like right now I'm doing right now. I'm showing in some way, I'm showing my leadership because I believe what I say is valuable, is important. I want to voice out. I took the courage and took the efforts, I took the time, took my energy to speak about it. There's one particular quote alongside with the first quote I just mentioned is, if you can speak, you can influence. If you can influence, you can change lives. And I believe that is something what I'm doing right now is showing by setting example, the best authentic example you can give to the audience, to the rest of the world. And in order to light the world, you have to be the light. But how to be the light? Build your leadership. And how to build the leadership? First of all, the easiest way is for you to express, to communicate. If you have an idea, do not hide it. Just talk to the people who can actually help you and work together with you. And I think that's really connected to the leadership. And finally, the courage. If there's one essential set part about leadership, I would say, there's many things about leader to make up a leader, but I would say courage is essential ingredient for leadership. Because think about all my stories that I have just described. That if I look back, I'm grateful that I become a fearless me, because I think I have a real mission on top of that. Guide me. That's my light to make me more courageous to do what I believe. And the more you believe what you do, the more fearless you could become, and the less you will be influenced by the things that are irrelevant and destructive. Trust yourself, and you need to build yourself to their path. And I think the courage will be always something in order to understand better about courage, you understand better about how your brain receive signals of message. That's another part of work, what I call neuroscience, psychology, understanding yourself.
How do you suggest that people who are already, kind of walking their own path with this, but maybe have not, they haven't done the level of work, they haven't been focused on this to the degree you have, for instance, how do you suggest people start, like in terms of practical things? How do people begin to nurture these qualities in themselves? Or if they see someone with high potential and they want to help that person develop, how would you suggest someone kind of bootstrap their life in this way, the way you did?
I would say every person's different in terms of how they seek information, how they build connection, how they evaluate and connect with opportunity. But I would say there's some skills. There's something I discovered in what I call cultural intelligence 2.0, is to build great skills under 3 aspects. The first one is really about understanding what digital cultural intelligence means.
Okay.
So really understand what you believe, why you believe, and like build critical thinking. More in critical thinking, independent thinking, and deep thinking, so that you're less influenced by whatever the groups and technology company or the force who want you to become who you want. They want you to be. It's like basically think about how not to be influenced in the way you shouldn't be.
Right.
Focus on that. That's very important.
I interrupted because if that's all they heard out of this and took it to heart, that one thing would make the biggest difference.
Yes.
That made the biggest difference in my life. anyone I know who's achieved something beyond what they would have expected, from from their background, anyone who's done anything involving a giant journey, it starts with that. It starts with listening to your own voice.
Exactly. Second tip, very important as well. Think about that. If you're a modern traveler, a business person, right? You travel to some places, and I can tell that I do this all the time. When I travel to New York or travel to different places, and I immediately connect with people who I consider friends.
That's great.
I have to use that intelligence to connect with people and add them on my social network. I know that different cultures have different social network. In China, we have WeChat, Weibo, but in the United States, I have this Facebook, LinkedIn. But in Asia, we have Lines and TikTok. I will do everything I could to connect them online. So I'll guarantee that if they are my friend, I don't want to lose them, first of all. But that's not the point. The point is, whenever I come back to my small town or my city, no matter how less connected I am in a physical location, I can always keep in touch with them.
Awesome.
Not just keep in touch with them. Most people observe daily lives and local news from their friends' posts, the circle. But I was able to identify risk and opportunities from the friends and global intelligence network that I curated. Because I allow myself to see the world I curate this intelligence network for me. They carry the information, the news, whatever they believe in their life, and I choose who to follow. And then I will build this diversity of intelligence network, and I will less be biased. I will less possibility to be biased and be influenced by even algorithms. For example, the AI network. They can quickly identify your personality better than knowing yourself. But what if I do a little bit trick to the AI that I want to my firm, in front of me as diverse as possible? It couldn't really even tell. I could like very different things. It's my goal to build a more intelligence network for me to make decisions.
Right.
That's what I do.
Right.
And the third thing would be very fundamentally generational diversity intelligence. You need to engage with people older than you.
Absolutely, and younger than you. And,
yes,
right.
That's so important. Think about it right now.
Totally.
And we are, I'm obviously under 30 years old, but I'm actually engaging with people much older than me. I learn so much from them.
Sure.
And I also can share a lot of things to them. And if we can create opportunities for the elder or the different generation to form dialogues, and then the people who are less or older generation, they have the power, influence, opportunities, the real insights of life. And the younger has the dynamics of life, have the energy, and have the flexibility. Perfect combination. If they could work together, they can engage together, communicate together. How powerful it could be.
And it takes somebody who's somewhere in the middle. It often takes someone who's somewhere in the middle to realize that, and go, wait a minute. Okay, I was you, and I can see I'm going where you are.
Yeah.
And let's unify that. Yeah.
All based on the curiosity and the motivation to learn.
What do you see for yourself? This is obviously a lifelong, this brand, this movement of yours this is an extension of this spirit that you have, which is clearly innate, and you've nurtured it, but this starts from within. And so this is obviously a lifelong mission. It'll probably take different forms. But what do you see? What are your hopes, desires, goals that you would publicly share? What do you see for yourself? What do you want for yourself? And by extension, those around you. But make this more personal in the next, short to medium term. Where do you want to be in 5 years philosophically? Because the place is going to change. You might be back here. Who knows where your pillow's going to be? But where do you want to be?
This is a little bit emotional to me, because if you ask about in 5 years, really, the world right now is very changing so fast, and people are constantly living in a spinning world, like being spun. I would say this beginning of the year, I had a quote for myself, which I'm going to say Chinese first again. 韶华易逝，只争朝夕, which means I only have little time in my youth or in my most energetic and capable time. And I will do my best, and I will actually insist on do not waste any time in realizing that. By saying that, I'll connect with my tours of my personality. One is mission driven, as obviously I just reviewed a little bit. Another one is playful. I think it's both very important. I should have a balance for both. I can't be really only focused on mission. And also playfulness means I care what is life, what life is about. I want to be able to really to be living no regrets, no matter what happened in 5 years or 10 years, I pass or not, pass the line or not. I want to be able to lead. I want to be able to create hope for a larger community, and for them to see, oh, this is what humanity should be about at this critical moment. I want to be able to strike a balance between being an advocate, or I really want to be able to work relentlessly on how we could help people to build more hope and happiness, realize what is a human being, what the fundamental values humans should be, instead of getting lost. And if I can do a little bit about that, I that's my mission. I'd be very happy in 5 or 10 years. And the playful side, of course, I want to continue bring happiness and to people. I can joke around sometimes in different languages, but I would say that that's the balance. That's it. That's the beauty of life.
Yingying, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, that's the show. I hope you enjoyed it this week. Don't forget to find out more about Yingying Li or her company Influence or any of the things we talked about. There are a bunch of links in the show notes, especially this week. So please check out the blog post at crazyinagoodway.com on the blog and podcast page to learn all about that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.